Queen.
He can stop dropping F-bombs on random people, and he has zero control over it.
Slut. What did you say?
Even though he offers a sincere apology, the stranger just flips him the bird and walks away. That night, on his way home, John gets jumped by two guys. By the time he wakes up in a hospital bed, his face is unrecognizable, and he is covered in broken bones. The scariest part, this isn't the first time he's been beaten, and it won't be the last. For over a decade, this curse has been tearing his life apart. Before all this, John was a golden boy with a bright future. He was the star goalie for his school soccer team, fueled by pure talent. His coach had high hopes, and his father, a hard-working miner, put all the family's dreams on his shoulders. They were doing everything they could to get him into the pros, but one day, everything changed. He started blinking and twitching uncontrollably. He tried his best to fight it, but the tics only got more frequent. Soon, he started shouting obscenities out of nowhere. One day in the cafeteria, the principal asked him how his lunch was. Suddenly, a tic hit, and John cursed him out. Despite his desperate explanations, he was dragged to the office and punished. The principal warned him that one more outburst would mean serious trouble, but the second John turned to leave, he couldn't hold it in any longer. That same day was the biggest game of his life. The coach had invited a big-time scout to watch him play. If he played like he usually did, a pro tryout was practically guaranteed, but the physical punishment from the principal and his constant twitching ruined his game. Disappointed, the scout walked out. Just like that, John's dreams of going pro were dead. His father couldn't handle the disappointment and called him a failure. When his mother tried to step in, it only made his father's temper flare. At dinner, as his father kept complaining, John's tics spiraled out of control. His father stormed out in a rage. His mother blamed John for the drama and told him to stop the weird behavior, or he'd have to eat on the floor by the fireplace. Nobody knew that John was actually suffering from a rare condition called Tourette syndrome. It's a neurological disorder that causes involuntary movements and vocal tics. You can just will it away, but back then, people didn't know better. They just thought he was a freak looking for attention. At school, the constant bullying and mocking made his symptoms even worse. After a misunderstanding where a classmate thought John was swearing at him, they got into a fight. The principal, who already had a grudge, gave him an ultimatum: admit you redoing this for attention or you re-expelled. John was terrified of being kicked out, but he couldn't admit to a lie. He was expelled on the spot. Trapped at home, his world got even smaller. That night, his mother told him his father might never come back. John knew the real reason his dad left, but when he asked, his mother just stayed silent, which was basically a yes. The bullying, the expulsion, and now the abandonment by his own father sent his Tourette into overdrive. With no support and nowhere to turn, he felt completely alone. At 13 years old, he walked into a freezing river at night, hoping to end the pain once and for all. Luckily, someone saved him. Only when she saw him in the hospital did his mother finally believe he was truly sick. But that comfort came a little too late. 13 years passed, and John was now 26. The Tourette's hadn't gotten any better. His mother still hadn't fully accepted him and felt embarrassed to be seen with him in public. But one day, things finally took a turn. While grocery shopping, John ran into an old friend named Molly. They were always close, and she invited him to catch up. John finally opened up and told her the truth about his condition. Molly shared her own heartbreak. Her mother, Dottie, was battling cancer and had only 6 months to live. Molly invited him over for dinner, but John was hesitant. He had spent years eating alone by the fireplace because of his mother's rules. He hadn't sat at a proper dinner table in forever. As he was leaving, Dottie called out to him,
John, get your ass in here. Be on the table in 2 minutes.
Her warmth made him nervous, and as soon as she opened the door, he had a tic. Instead of being offended, Dottie welcomed him in with open arms. John tried to hide in the bathroom to calm down, but the pressure of everyone waiting for him made his twitching worse. He accidentally broke a glass, and Molly had to explain his condition to the family. Dottie went to find him and found him hiding behind the house. John apologized, saying he forgot to take his meds, but Dottie, who was a neurological nurse, stopped him right there. She knew those meds caused permanent brain damage and numbed his emotions. She told him he shouldn't be on them long term. That simple moment of understanding left John speechless. For the first time in his life, someone actually got it. Even so, he still chose to eat by the fireplace that night so he wouldn't bother bother anyone. Seeing how careful he was being broke Dottie's heart. But for John, it was the happiest, most peaceful meal he'd had in 13 years. Dottie told him that if he wanted to stay, he just needed to work on how he spoke. Having faced her own mortality, Dottie knew that John didn't need judgment. He needed a home where he was respected as a person. She made a bold move and asked him to move in. Her husband and son weren't sure at first, but they agreed just to make her happy. When John told his mother he was moving out and quitting his meds, she was cold. She claimed Dottie just wanted a free volunteer and warned him that without the drugs, his annoying symptoms would be non-stop, but John didn't care. He moved in anyway. His symptoms didn't disappear, but his life changed completely. Dottie encouraged him to go outside and face the world's stairs, no matter what he did. Dottie showed him nothing but patience. Slowly, John started finding his confidence again. Dottie even took him to a bar to help him get used to crowds. John actually loved it. He was dancing and even hit it off with a girl. But then, he accidentally knocked over someone's drink. Despite his immediate apology, the guy punched him. A brawl broke out, and John ended up in jail for the night. To make matters worse, the guy's dad was a lawyer and sued him. John's new confidence shattered instantly. Dottie didn't give up on him. She found him a job as a manager's assistant. John was honest about his condition from the start. The job was simple. Just make tea, something John was great at. He made a perfect cup of tea and brought it to the manager, Tommy. A tic caused a minor accident, but Tommy didn't care. He loved the tea and was incredibly kind to John. Then, Dottie dropped a bombshell. He got the job, and even better news, Dottie's cancer was a misdiagnosis. Everyone was celebrating, but on his way to buy party food, John was jumped and beaten by two men again. He woke up in the hospital, but this time, he had a support system. When he finally started work, he gave it 110%. Tommy became a mentor and a father figure to him. He encouraged John to help people understand Tourette, so the world could become more accepting. When John's court date arrived, things got tense. The judge thought John's tics were a sign of disrespect. Even though his lawyer provided medical proof, the judge wouldn't listen. He demanded John repeat the oath, which was impossible for him. John was kicked out of the courtroom. That's when Tommy stepped in. He stood before the court and vouched for John's character.
That young man over there would not harm a fly. He is the nicest, kindest, most respectful young man I have ever met.
Tommy's words convinced the judge and the jury, and John was finally cleared of all charges. Life was finally peaceful, but then tragedy struck. Tommy didn't show up for work one day. When John went to check on him, he found Tommy dead on the floor. Losing Tommy was like losing a father all over again. At the funeral, John stayed outside because he didn't want a tic to ruin the service. Eventually, John's hard work paid off, and he took over Tommy's old job after 5 years with Dottie. She helped him get his own apartment. John was finally living the life he always wanted. He even made friends with some local bikers who didn't care about his swearing. They even tested him by having him deliver a package that John thought was illegal. It turned out to be just candy, but it showed John was becoming part of the community. Word about John spread, and soon a couple with a daughter who had Tourette's reached out. They wanted his advice. When John and the girl met, they both started swearing at each other immediately, but instead of being offended, they just laughed. For the first time, John saw himself in someone else and realized he wasn't alone. He remembered Tommy's words about educating the world soon. A police officer he knew asked him to give a speech to the force. The speech was a huge success. Suddenly, hospitals and schools everywhere wanted him to speak. John even organized a meet-up for people with Tourette, so it was a place where they could be themselves without fear or judgment. John's activism changed the way the UK looked at the disease. He was even recognized by the Queen and awarded a Medal of Honor. During the ceremony, he had a tic, but this time, the world just smiled. He even reconnected with his sister at the event. When he showed the medal to his mother, she was proud, even if she still worried about his tics. John didn't hold a grudge anymore. He understood she just didn't know how to handle it back then. Eventually, a professor reached out with a new device that could suppress tics. John tested it out by going to the one place he feared most, a library. For the first time in 30 years, he was completely silent. He felt a peace he hadn't known since he was a child. On the train home, he struck up a normal conversation with a stranger. No twitching, no swearing, just a regular guy having a regular talk. It was a rebirth 30 years in the making. Medicine can help the body, but only empathy and acceptance can truly heal the soul. True light doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being seen, respected, and loved for exactly who you are.